The first thing I want to actually talk about is we know where a former Buckeye is going to be playing his college football next year.
Yeah.
And I saw that actually Miles Walker had committed to Boise State, which I thought was an interesting decision, interesting choice. So he's going to the number 3 seeded Broncos. What'd you make of that choice?
Disappointing. It's a needed position. But I'm not surprised by it. Again, like when we talked about last time, I think we kind of both agreed on this. There's still guys on the Ohio State offensive line that could play themselves into the starting roles this playoff. It looks like Luke Montgomery's on his way to doing it.
Yeah.
For Austin, maybe so. He kind of won me back last week. I'm not gonna. Last week. So I'm not gonna lie about that. But it sucks. But I'm not too worried about it. It's not something that grinds my gears per se.
Yeah, I mean, we knew he was obviously going to leave for the portal, and a Mountain West spot that seems about right. We don't have much film on him, like we don't know how good he is. But here's my take: if he couldn't really crack the rotation on the current starting offensive line and what they got going on, that means it's not a huge loss because it's not like these guys are world beaters out there, minus Seth and Josh, obviously, who they've lost.
Yeah.
So that was a bummer.
It only hurts the depth.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's something that is obviously a big issue. But the big thing is the game. And that's coming up here a couple days on Wednesday. And, I've thought about it more since we've last talked. I've seen you've thought about it more. I saw you changed your prediction, actually.
Today.
I saw on social media. So let's go ahead and start with that. And I want to know why you went ahead and flipped your prediction. Tell the people, for those who didn't know, what your original prediction was and what you're changing it to now.
I didn't have a score, but from the time the playoff happened up until today, I had Oregon beating Ohio State. It simply came down to offensive line played good last week. I don't know if it's going to happen again. Now, where it changed. I think that Ohio State is doing things on offense, specifically through the pass game, that is going to put Oregon in a bind. Their linebacker, Jackson's a good athlete, but their linebackers are not that great in coverage. And Jeremiah has been in the slot a lot more, doing crossing routes, a la 2021, 2018 Ohio State, and he has free release. My biggest reason, I just can't see Denzel Burke playing that bad again. I just can't. And, I don't like taking the guy's worst performance or his best performance. I like to take the averages of where players or teams are usually around. And Denzel Burke is still one of the best corners in college football. After that Oregon game, man, we haven't given a passing touchdown. Less than 900 yards receiving we've given up. So, with that being said, I think with him playing how he usually does, our passing game being a little bit more strategic in what we do, also not doing what we did a few games ago and having closed sets or tight sets, and then also what we did in the run game, I thought against Tennessee was very cool to see. A lot of bodies moving around the offensive line, guys moving bodies, going toward the outside, running counters, running gap scheme, as we both said they need to be doing. Those are all things that, yes, Oregon has saw it. They have the film on it now. But I believe that those are the reasons Ohio State's going to win this game. The score I had was 33-31.
Yeah.
It's not because Jaden Fielding gets a last-second field goal. That is not why we win.
Yeah. Although I did hear a report today that apparently Fielding hit a 56-yarder in practice, which bully for him, in practice. I'd like to see something like that in a game. But, you make some good points, and those are the same sort of things that I've seen, and, specifically looking over the Tennessee film again. I think it's almost to the point where you kind of have to throw out the Michigan tape just because it was an outlier and because of how poorly they've played
Mhm.
against Michigan in each of the last 4 years. I don't think you can take a. I mean, obviously it counts. It was a
Right.
game they should have won. It was the least talented Michigan team they've played in 4 years, but there's clearly something mental going on with this team in Michigan.
Yeah.
So Oregon's not coming out in winged helmets. I mean, they might have wings on them, but they're not going to be the Michigan helmet. So I think the offensive scheme is going to be able to have their way.
Mhm.
I think they are going to make sure that they have some more things shored up defensively because obviously the first matchup, there were so many things that went wrong, specifically on the defensive side of the ball and really in the secondary. But it wasn't just the secondary's fault. They couldn't get any pressure on Gabriel. I mean, Dylan
Mhm.
Gabriel had a picnic in the pocket every time he
He
stepped
did.
back to pass.
He did.
So I think those two things need to change. And I think one of them kind of feeds the other. If Ohio State can get pressure with their front four, it's going to take a lot of pressure off of the secondary, specifically those corners. Denzel Burke, Jermaine Matthews, Hancock, Igbinosun. So, I'm really interested to see how this game starts early because I think we're going to get an indication defensively how Ohio State is going to try to slow down Oregon. And I think that's kind of where this game is going to be won or lost, whether or not Ohio State's new revamped defense is settled down from allowing those big plays to happen like they did in the first game. I think that's where this game's won or lost.
Is there anything that you're worried about?
Yes, I am worried about still allowing big plays, defensively, and the offensive line. We've talked about this really since McLaughlin went down.
Mhm.
The Tennessee game was great. It was great offensive line play, but I need to see more. I need to see it happen at least one more time. And with those two guys that they've got up front with Birch and Uiagalelei, I mean, those guys are real dudes.
Yeah.
And those guys are players who can wreck the pocket, and not just in the passing game. They can move the offensive line back in the run game too. So those are guys I'm worried about. And obviously the special teams, but that goes without saying. That's a concern every game. But I do think this team is talented enough to overcome those a la Tennessee. What about you?
My biggest concern is getting pressure. If we can get pressure without blitzing. Now, we've had a lot of success getting to the quarterback when we blitz, rather than be running a stunt and then sending one guy, which I do expect us to do in this game. But how many times do we have to do that in order just to get to the quarterback or at least get in his face? It's not even about getting there from the edge. On the offensive line, their weakness is the interior of their offensive line. We need guys like Tyleek and Ty to have big games. We do. I expect McDonald to get in this game. I expect Edric Houston to get some snaps. Those guys have to play really good, and they need to take advantage of that mismatch that we have. And then also just on the edge, stopping them from running the ball towards the outside. They like to run the ball to the left a lot, and
Yep.
so that's on JTT's. That's on him. That's on you to go against Connolly Jr., who's one of the best tackles in the nation, and have a good game. Dude, show that you are one of the best defensive ends in this country, and that's what I want to see from them, and that's what worries me.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about the fact that it seemed like the Tennessee game was the first time we'd seen JTT and Sawyer really kind of play well in the same game.
Yeah.
So that's something that I would really like to see happen in this game. I also saw today, Will Howard was talking to the media, and he was talking about how against Tennessee they played pissed off. They had pissed off energy, and they were angry, and they needed to kind of carry the same energy for the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And I want to hear your thoughts on that because while I do agree, I also think they can play with a chip on their shoulder, but if they play too angrily, just kind of blinded, if they use too much emotion, that is when mistakes happen. That's just the fact. So what do you make of his comment there?
Yeah, that's actually something that's been on my mind. Whether Will tries to overcompensate for the mistake that he had at the end of the game in the first game when we played them.
Yep.
In football, you have to have controlled chaos. That's how you win football games. And you can play angry, but you gotta keep a level head, man. You gotta keep a level head to the game. Don't get too up, don't get too down, even kill, and don't try to do too much. Stay within your game, let the game come to you. When it's time to attack the game, you do it. But
Yep.
I don't mind the quote, but will. But
yeah, I know. He needs to he definitely does feel a lot of responsibility for what happened in the first matchup. I mean, he mentioned it during talking to the media. He said he still has some nightmares about that final drive and how it ended, and how it was on him that he didn't get down fast enough.
Yeah.
But like you said, I don't want him necessarily carrying that into this game. I want that to kind of be in the past. I don't want that to be in the forefront of his mind where he's got to think, oh, I've got to be the hero because I screwed up last time. You know what I mean?
Right.
He needs to keep doing what he did against Tennessee, which is get the ball out to Jeremiah Smith, get the ball out to Emeka Egbuka, have some decent runs, stabilize the team. So that's what I'm looking for from him. I don't need him to be the best player on the field. The best player on the field is Jeremiah Smith. You need to get the ball to him.
Yeah.
That's what I'm most concerned about.
I mean, speaking about Jeremiah, I mean, he was asked about that that OPI at the end of the game, and
yeah.
Listen, man, I feel him because even when it happened, my thought process was, oh, the corner engaged first, put his hands on him. So for Jeremiah, hey, he's 6'3", 220. You're going up against a 5'9", 180-pound corner. So I always said that I believe the reason that the official made that call was because of how crazy it looked, like of him just throwing that guy 5 yards. Whereas I didn't really believe it was OPI, but
it was a flop. Let's just call it what it was.
No, it was.
Yeah,
it was.
And he has learned from that experience. Also, he's gotten a little bit. He knows how to make those moves a little bit more subtle, so he can get some separation from the defensive backs where it doesn't look like he's using both hands to push off. So I think that's good. And if he is able to, it's not just him. If the team in general is able to keep themselves from having those big mistake penalties that can either kill drives or sustain drives for Oregon, a big offensive pass interference. I mean, that put them back behind the sticks. That ended up being a drive killer. If Igbinosun has too many pass interference penalties and on third down and Ohio State can't get off the field, those are drive killers. If they can avoid those kinds of penalties, I think this game really turns in the favor of Ohio State, because me as a fan, I'm kind of baking those in to my prediction anyway, because we've seen all season that's what happened. Last game was the first time we've seen them really play a clean game.
Yeah, and something else to take away from that game, I was just talking about with Bryce. We had them at 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 a few times in that game. And then they would either get it, or some of those big plays came off of those. Those are opportunities where Ohio State has got off the field. I thought there were times in that game where Ohio State could have taken control. They go up and then they get back on offense, and Junkins gets stripped away from the ball from a great play from Derek Harmon.
Yeah,
times like that. Coming out of halftime, they stop Oregon, get the ball back, don't score. You get a goal line stand. Yes, you're on your own side. You're close to your end zone, but that was a chance to take a 2-score game, or 2-score lead, and they didn't do that. And this, those are chances you gotta make when you get that chance to go big on a team. You got to do it, because I truly believe that if Ohio State gets a 10-point lead, we win. I don't think you come back from 10 points in Ohio State now with that defense.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good point. They had opportunities to kind of, I don't want to say put them away, because Oregon's a really high-powered offense where they certainly could have come back from a multi-touchdown deficit, but it makes things a lot tougher. And you're right. They didn't. They weren't able to do that. So I'm really hoping that changes here in the Rose Bowl. And